You wake up before the sun. Not because you want to, because you have to. There is no alarm clock, no gentle morning light filtering through the curtains, just a quiet knock on your door, 3 taps. Always the same rhythm. You have learned not to hesitate because hesitation gets noticed here. In this place, everything gets noticed. You sit up instantly. Because today, like every day for the past several years, your job is to eat first, and possibly die doing it. Somewhere deep inside North Korea's most fortified complexes, a group of men and women wake up every single morning knowing that their lives exist as a buffer between the world's most paranoid dictator and an assassin's poison. They are called food tasters, and the story of what they endure is one of the most quietly terrifying tales to emerge from inside the Hermit Kingdom. You do not remember exactly when you stopped counting the days, but you remember when you started counting the meals. Meal 1, meal 50, meal 2, 100, and now meal 847. 847 times you have sat at a table that was never meant for you. 847 times you have taken a bite knowing it might be your last. And yet somehow you are still here, which makes you both valuable and expendable. 2 things that should not exist in the same sentence, but inside North Korea, they always do. The role of a food taster is one of the oldest forms of personal protection in the history of power. Roman emperors used slaves, medieval kings used servants, ancient Chinese dynasties built entire bureaucracies around the act of eating safely. But what North Korea has done with this tradition is something far more clinical, far more controlled, and far more psychologically devastating than anything history has recorded before. Defectors who have spoken to journalists and researchers over the years describe a system that begins with selection. Food tasters are not volunteers. They are chosen. Chosen for their loyalty, their physical health, their personal history, and perhaps most importantly, their perceived disposability. Young people, often from politically trusted families, are quietly absorbed into the service apparatus surrounding the supreme leader. They are told they are being given an honor. And in a country where honor and terror are practically the same word, they believe it. The training is methodical. Tasters learn to identify hundreds of compounds through taste alone. Bitter almonds, metallic undertones, chemical residues that dissolve into proteins and fats with unsettling ease. They study the classics: arsenic, cyanide, ricin, and the newer threats, synthesized poisons that leave almost no trace and act on timelines that make diagnosis nearly impossible. They are trained to sit still even when their instincts are screaming. Because showing fear, showing any reaction at all, is itself a liability in a palace that runs on the performance of calm. The kitchen, where the food is prepared, operates under layers of surveillance that most intelligence agencies would envy. Ingredients are sourced through separate supply chains. Imported goods are inspected multiple times before they ever reach a chef's hands. The chefs themselves are background checked, monitored, and rotated. But despite all of that, the taster remains the final line of defense. The human sensor that no technology has ever been able to replace, not because machines are less accurate, but because a machine cannot be held responsible. A person can. This is the part no one fully understands from the outside. The waiting. After every bite, there is a window. Not the kind you look through, the kind you survive. Poison is not always instant. Some compounds are designed to act in seconds. Others take minutes. Others are slow enough to be mistaken for illness, for stress, for an ordinary bad morning. In that window, the taster sits perfectly still and performs the most demanding act of their entire existence. They pretend everything is fine while their body quietly decides their fate. 30 seconds. Nothing. 1 minute. Still nothing. A nod to the guard. That means safe. For now. Defector accounts collected by organizations like the Database Center for North Korean Human Rights paint a picture of extraordinary psychological damage that accumulates quietly in these individuals over time. They develop a form of hypervigilance that never switches off. Every taste becomes a test. Every sensation becomes a question. Fear starts to mimic poisons so precisely that the mind can no longer tell them apart. One former official described tasters who had to be retired not because they were compromised physically, but because the mental erosion had become complete. They would taste clean food and still freeze. They had been conditioned so deeply into survival mode that normalcy itself became threatening. Some did not make it past that condition. Some did not make it past the hallway. History records at least several credible accounts of food tasters dying in service to the Kim dynasty. The details are sparse because North Korea does not publicize these events, and defectors who know about them often speak in careful, coded language. But what emerges is a consistent pattern. A taster notices something wrong. The taster hesitates, reacts, or in some cases simply collapses. The kitchen is cleared, the supply chain is investigated, and quietly, efficiently, another name is removed from the roster and another person is chosen to fill the chair. What is rarely discussed is what happens to the families of those who disappear from service. Inside North Korea, the concept of collective punishment is not a theory. It is policy. Known formally through a system called Yeonjwa-jae, guilt by association means that when one person falls from grace, the consequences extend to parents, siblings, and children. A taster who fails, who collapses, who shows the wrong expression at the wrong moment does not simply lose their own life. They risk pulling everyone they have ever loved into a labor camp on the far edge of nowhere. This knowledge does not make the tasters braver. It makes them perform perfectly, endlessly, because every bite they take is also a bite taken on behalf of the people waiting for them back home. Kim Jong-un's food security apparatus is believed to be the most elaborate version of this system the Kim dynasty has ever built. His father, Kim Jong-il, was famously paranoid about assassination, traveling by private train rather than aircraft to prevent mid-air attacks, changing his daily schedule unpredictably and surrounding himself with a security detail that numbered in the hundreds. But Jong-un, who came to power in 2011, took these paranoia-driven protocols and industrialized them. He has executed senior officials, including his own uncle Jang Song-thaek, in 2013, and is widely believed to have ordered the assassination of his half-brother Kim Jong-nam in 2017 using the nerve agent VX in a Malaysian airport. A man willing to use a weapon of mass destruction in a public international terminal is not a man who leaves his dinner to chance, and the paranoia is not entirely irrational. The history of political assassination by poison is long and well documented across the world, but especially across Asia and the Soviet bloc that North Korea so closely mirrors in its institutional design. Leaders who die by poison rarely see it coming. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive wearing a uniform or carrying a weapon. It arrives in a glass of wine, in a bowl of broth, in a slice of fruit that looks perfectly ordinary under perfectly ordinary light. The taster is the only person who stands between that ordinary-looking threat and the man who believes himself untouchable. The food tasters who serve Kim Jong-un exist inside a paradox that would break most people. They are essential but invisible. Trusted but surveilled, kept alive because they are useful and never allowed to forget that the moment they are not useful, that changes. Former members of the North Korean elite who have spoken about the inner workings of the palace describe a culture of absolute performance. Every person in that building, from the senior generals down to the kitchen staff, is performing loyalty every single hour of every single day. The tasters perform it with their bodies. With every meal, they physically demonstrate devotion to the leader by placing themselves between him and death. There are no awards given for surviving 800 meals. There are no ceremonies, no commendations, no quiet acknowledgements from the man whose life they protect. The taster exists in a space where success means nothing happened, where the best possible outcome is to be completely forgotten, to sit down, eat, nod, stand up, and walk away without anyone thinking about you for a single second. In a world where visibility means danger, invisibility is the closest thing to safety that exists. And so they cultivate it. They wear it like a second uniform. They practice being unremarkable the way other people practice being exceptional. What makes this existence even more isolating is the silence surrounding it. Tasters cannot speak to each other about what they experience. There is no shared debrief, no quiet conversation in a break room, no moment where two people in the same impossible situation look at each other and acknowledge the weight of it. The system is deliberately designed to keep them separated, because shared experience creates solidarity, and solidarity creates the one thing the regime fears more than poison. It creates the possibility of refusal. And so each taster carries their 800 meals, their 900 meals, their 1,000 meals, entirely alone. The fear belongs only to them. The doubt belongs only to them. And on the mornings when they cannot tell whether the tightness in their chest is anxiety or something far worse, that belongs only to them too. And somewhere far away from the long polished table where Kim Jong-un will eventually eat, the taster sits in a plain chair, in a plain room, doing the only thing they can do: waiting, counting heartbeats like they are currency, listening to their own body like it is a clock that might stop without warning. Another dish arrives, then another, each one tasted with the same terrifying intimacy. Salt, oil, texture, aftertaste. That slight metallic edge on the third course that might mean everything or might mean nothing. A bitterness that arrives too late to be stopped and too faint to be confirmed. The taster nods. The food is cleared, and somewhere nearby the leader sits down to his meal, confident, untouched by doubt, because these quiet, invisible people exist. Hours pass. The taster sits alone. Every sensation still feels important. Every breath still feels measured. And then 3 knocks on the door. Same. Rhythm. A guard in the hallway. Expressionless, as always. Another meal. Meal 848. Still alive. For now, still counted. Still useful, still sitting at the table that was never meant for them, doing the only job the world will never see, that earns no monuments, no records, and no retirement. Just the same quiet knock, the same 3 taps, the same moment every morning where they decide all over again whether surviving is the same thing as living.